You're too thin to work. The words landed flat, without anger, without pity, just a statement carried by dry Texas air. August, 1944. The sun sat high over the plains, pressing heat down like a weight you could feel on your shoulders. Dust moved in slow spirals across the yard as the transport truck idled, its engine ticking as it cooled. 8 women stood in a line, their gray uniforms hanging loose on frames that had known too little food and too many months of uncertainty. One of them swayed. Then she fell. Not dramatically. Just quietly, like something that had run out of strength long before it reached the ground. No one rushed forward. No one shouted. The guards watched. The Cowboys watched. The world seemed to pause, balanced on the edge of expectation. This was how it worked. Weakness had consequences. Anna Weiss lay still for a second, staring at the dust inches from her face. She could smell it, dry and warm, mixed with something faintly sweet from the distant fields. Her hands didn't move. Not yet. Around her, boots shifted against the ground. Leather creaked. Somewhere, a screen door tapped lightly in the wind. She had heard the stories. If you couldn't work, you were a problem. If you were a problem, you were removed. Not punished. Not explained. Just gone from whatever came next. Her fingers pressed slowly into the dirt. She pushed herself up halfway, her arms trembling under the effort. No one helped her. That made sense. Help was not part of the equation. She lifted her head. And then she heard it again, closer this time. You're too thin to work. The man stood a few feet away, hat pulled low, shadow cutting across his face. Jack Turner. 40 years old. Rancher. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't step closer. Just looked at them the way a man looks at a field before deciding what to plant. The women waited. This was the moment. Orders would follow. Back to the truck. Back to the camp. Or worse, somewhere quieter, somewhere out of sight. Anna got to her feet fully now, her legs unsteady but locked in place by something deeper than strength. Around her, the others stood the same way. Still. Silent. Ready to be told what they were worth. The heat. Preston. A fly circled once, then disappeared. Jack adjusted his hat slightly, eyes moving from one face to another. He took his time. No urgency. No frustration. Just observation. Then he turned. Not toward the fields. Not toward the guards. Toward the house. The porch boards creaked under his boots as he climbed the steps. He reached for the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then it opened. Inside, shadows. Cool air. The faint, unmistakable smell of coffee. He didn't look back right away. When he did, it was brief. Just a glance over his shoulder. Come on, he said. No explanation. No command in his tone. Just a direction, as simple as the first sentence. The women didn't move. Not at first. This wasn't part of the pattern. Not something they had prepared for. Anna felt it before she understood it. The shift. Small. Almost invisible. But there. The world had not followed the expected line. And that was more unsettling than anything else. She took one step forward. Then stopped. Behind her, someone whispered in German, too quiet to carry. The guards said nothing. The Cowboys said nothing. The only sound was the wind brushing against the dry grass beyond the yard. Jack was already inside now. A chair scraped softly against the floor. Then another sound. A cup being set down. Anna looked at the open doorway. Light spilled across the threshold, cutting a sharp line between outside and in. She swallowed, her throat dry. Then she stepped again. The air inside the house felt different, cooler by several degrees, like stepping into a place where time moved slower. Anna paused just past the doorway, her eyes adjusting as the brightness of the yard fell behind her. The room was simple. Wooden table. 4 chairs. A sink by the window. A pot resting on the stove, steam rising in thin, quiet threads. Coffee. Real coffee. The smell settled into her chest before she could stop it, warm and steady, something she had not felt in months. The others gathered behind her, hesitant, filling the doorway but not crossing fully inside. No one spoke. Boots sounded softly against the floorboards as Jack moved to the table. He set his hat down. Pulled out a chair. Saturday. The motion was unhurried, practiced like he had done it the same way every morning for years. On the table sat plates already prepared. Bread. Thick slices, still pale at the center. Meat cut clean, resting beside it. A small dish of butter beginning to soften in the heat. Nothing extravagant. Nothing excessive. Just enough. Always enough. Anna watched his hands. Steady. No sudden movement. He reached for the bread, tore a piece, and ate. No words. No explanation. Just action. The room held its breath. This was the moment that did not fit. No orders. No conditions. No exchange. He ate again, slower this time, as if to make something clear without saying it. Safe. That was the message. Not spoken. Shown. Anna felt it in the way her shoulders lowered, just slightly, before she caught herself and pulled them back up again. She had learned not to trust the first impression of anything. Not anymore. Behind her, one of the women shifted her weight. Another took a step back, unsure. The line between outside and inside still held. Jack reached for a second piece of bread. Buttered it this time. The knife made a soft scraping sound across the surface. Ordinary. Completely ordinary. He set the knife down and looked up, not directly at anyone, just in their direction. It gets cold, he said. That was all. Anna looked at the table again. The bread. The meat. The coffee. She could feel her body reacting before her mind agreed. Hunger was not a thought. It was a pull. A quiet, constant pull that had been there so long it had become part of her. She stepped forward. One step. Then another. The floor did not give way. No one stopped her. She reached the chair closest to the edge of the table and stood there, waiting for something to change. Nothing did. Jack continued eating. The same pace. The same rhythm. She sat. Slowly. The wood was solid beneath her. Real. Her hands rested in her lap for a moment, then moved, almost without permission, toward the plate. She stopped inches away. Looked at him. He did not look back. He did not need to. She picked up the bread. It was heavier than she expected. Warm at the edges. She broke a small piece. Brought it to her mouth. The first bite was quiet. No sound. Just the motion of chewing, careful, controlled. The taste spread slowly. Wheat. Salt. Something rich she could not name at first because it had been too long. Her eyes closed for a second. Then opened again. Across the table, Jack poured coffee into a tin cup. The dark liquid filled it halfway. He pushed the pot slightly toward her side without looking. An invitation. Nothing more. Behind her, another chair moved. Then another. The line broke. One by one, they stepped inside. The room filled slowly, not with sound, but with presence. Chairs moved in careful increments, wood against wood, each motion measured as if too much noise might break whatever fragile permission had been given. Anna kept her eyes on the table as the others sat, one by one, their movements cautious, almost rehearsed in silence. No one reached immediately. No one spoke. The air carried the scent of coffee and something else now, something warmer, something closer to memory than survival. Across from her, Jack continued eating, steady, unbothered, as if 8 strangers in his kitchen was nothing unusual, as if this moment did not carry weight. He did not watch them. That mattered more than if he had. It gave space. It gave them the illusion of choice. Anna took another bite, slightly larger this time. Her hands still trembled, but less than before. The bread softened as she chewed, the texture familiar in a way that felt almost dangerous. She forced herself to slow down. Control. Always control. Beside her, a woman named Lise reached for her plate, hesitated, then pulled her hand back. Her eyes moved between the food and the man at the table, searching for something that would explain this. It did not come. Jack wiped his hands on a cloth, simple, habitual, then leaned back slightly in his chair. Not finished. Just pausing. He reached for his cup, took a drink, set it down with a quiet tap. Outside, the wind brushed against the house, a low, steady sound that filled the spaces between breaths. Anna reached for the cup near her. Tin. Light. She poured carefully, the liquid dark and smooth as it filled the bottom. Steam rose in thin lines. She brought it close, not drinking. Yet, just letting the heat touch her face. It smelled like mornings she could barely remember. Like something that existed before uniforms and numbers and transport trucks. She took a small sip. Bitter. Strong. Real. Her shoulders lowered again. This time she did not correct it. Across the table, one of the younger women began to eat, quickly at first, then slower as if remembering something important. Another followed. The rhythm changed. Not rushed. Not desperate. Just quiet acceptance, unfolding one movement at a time. Jack stood without warning. The chair legs scraped softly against the floor. Every head lifted. The room tightened again for a second. He walked to the stove, lifted the lid of the pot, and stirred. The sound was soft, circular, steady. He reached for another plate, added more food, then set it down at the center of the table. No announcement. No instruction. Just more. Enough for everyone. Always enough. Anna watched this closely. Not the food. The pattern. There was no calculation in it. No sign of keeping track, of measuring who took what. That was new. That was the part her mind could not place. In every place before this, everything had been counted. Controlled. Assigned. Here, nothing was said, and yet something was understood. Eat. Rest. Stay. Simple things, given without condition. The door behind them remained open. The line of sunlight still cut across the floor, unchanged. Outside the yard waited, the same dust, the same heat, the same expectations. Inside, something else had begun. Not trust. Not yet. But the absence of fear, even for a moment, was enough to feel unfamiliar. Jack returned to his seat, picked up his fork, and continued eating. No speech. No explanation. He did not need one. The proof was already on the table. Time did not rush inside the house. It stretched, slow and deliberate, measured not in minutes but in small, steady actions. Plates emptied. Cups refilled. The sharp edge of hunger softened into something quieter, something more controlled. Anna noticed it first in her hands. They no longer trembled when she reached for the bread. The movement was still careful, still restrained, but it belonged to her again. Across the table, Lise spoke for the first time, her voice low, shaped by hesitation. Why? The words sat in the air, fragile, almost out of place. No one looked at her. Not even Anna. Questions had a cost. They always had. Jack did not answer immediately. He finished what was on his fork, set it down, and wiped his hands again with the same cloth, the same motion as before. Consistent. Predictable. Then he looked up, not at Lise directly, but at the table, at the space they all shared. Because you need it, he said. Nothing more. No explanation. No justification. The answer did not expand. It did not invite further discussion. It simply existed. Anna felt something shift again, smaller this time, but deeper. Not confusion. Not suspicion. Something else. Something closer to recognition. Outside, the sound of an engine broke the rhythm. Distant at first. Then closer. Tires against dry ground. The women froze, almost in unison, their bodies responding before their thoughts could catch up. The old pattern returned in an instant. Food forgotten. Cups left midair. Eyes moved toward the open door where sunlight still cut across the floor. A military jeep came into view, dust trailing behind it in a long, pale cloud. It stopped near the yard, the engine idling low. 2 men stepped out. Uniforms pressed. Boots cleaned despite the road. One carried a clipboard. The other scanned the house before moving forward. The sound of their steps approached, firm, measured, official. Inside, no one moved. Jack did not stand. He did not rush. He reached for his cup, took a drink, set it down. The doorframe filled with shadow as the first officer stepped inside. He paused, taking in the scene. 8 prisoners seated at a table. Plates. Food. Coffee. No tools. No work. No supervision in the way he expected. The second man followed, his eyes narrowing slightly as he looked from one face to another. Silence held. Thick. Unbroken. "Mr. Turner," the officer said, his voice controlled, carrying the weight of rank without raising volume. Jack looked up. Calm. Present. "Yes, sir." The officer took a step forward, boots firm against the floorboards. He glanced at the table again, then back. At Jack. "These prisoners were assigned for labor." Each word placed carefully. "They are not in the fields." Not a question. A statement waiting to be challenged. Anna felt her breath slow, then stop. This was the moment everything corrected itself. The pattern returning. The world aligning with what it had always been. Jack rested his forearms on the table, hands still, eyes steady. He did not look at the women. He did not need to. "They will be," he said. Simple. Direct. The officer's jaw tightened slightly. "Then explain why they are here." The room seemed smaller now. The air thinner. Every sound outside faded into nothing. Jack leaned back slightly in his chair, just enough to shift his weight, just enough to show he was not being pressed. He looked at the officer, then briefly at the plates, then back again. "Because they could not stand 10 minutes in that heat," he said. No emotion. Just fact. The officer held his gaze. The clipboard remained still at his side. "And your solution is to feed them?" The question carried something sharper now. Not anger. Not yet. Expectation. Jack nodded once. "Yes, sir." Silence followed. Long enough to feel. Long enough to matter. The silence did not break right away. It settled deeper, pressing into the walls, into the table, into the space between every breath. The officer shifted his weight slightly, the leather of his boots creaking against the floorboards, a small sound that carried more weight than it should have. His eyes moved across the table again, slower this time, taking in the details he had missed at first glance. The plates were not untouched. The women were not refusing. They were eating. Carefully. Controlled. Alive in a way that did not match the reports he had read. He looked back at Jack. "These are prisoners of war," he said, each word placed with precision. "They are assigned to labor under supervision." Jack nodded once. He did not interrupt. The officer continued, his voice steady, professional. "There are procedures. Schedules. Expectations." He paused, just long enough to let the weight of those words settle. "This is not in any of them." Jack rested his hand near his cup, fingers still, his posture unchanged. "No, sir," he said. Agreement, without surrender. The second officer stepped forward slightly now, his gaze sharper, more direct. He looked at Anna, then at the others, measuring something he could not easily define. "How long have they been here?" he asked. "About 20 minutes," Jack replied. The man frowned, just briefly. 20 minutes. Not hours. Not days. Not a pattern yet. Just a moment. That complicated things. Anna kept her eyes on the table, but she listened to every word, each one settling into place with quiet clarity. This was the edge. The place where things could turn back. Where the rules would reassert themselves. Where kindness, if that was what this was, would be corrected into something safer, something documented. The first officer exhaled slowly, then took another step into the room. He stopped beside the table, close enough now to see the details clearly. The bread torn, not rationed. The cups filled without measure. The absence of guards at their shoulders. He reached out, not touching anything, just letting his hand hover briefly above the surface, as if testing the reality of it. Then he lowered it. "They are under your responsibility," he said. Jack nodded again. "Yes, sir. If they fail to perform, it reflects on you." "Yes, sir." The officer studied him for a moment longer, searching for hesitation, for doubt, for any sign that this was uncertainty rather than decision. He did not find it. Jack's expression remained the same. Not defiant. Not apologetic. Just certain. The kind of certainty that did not need reinforcement. Outside, the engine of the Jeep ticked softly as it cooled, a steady rhythm that filled the quiet spaces. Inside, the air held steady, unchanged. Anna realized then that her hands were no longer shaking at all. She picked up her cup again, took a small sip, and set it down with care. The motion felt almost normal. The officer noticed. Not the action itself, but the way it was done. Controlled. Present. Not the behavior of someone collapsing. Not the behavior of someone incapable. Something else. Something rebuilding. He straightened slightly, his posture returning to form, the lines of authority settling back into place. "You have 1 day," he said finally. The words were measured, deliberate. "Tomorrow, they report to the fields. Fully capable." A condition. A boundary. A way to restore order without undoing what had already happened. Jack inclined his head once. "Understood." The officer held his gaze for one more second, then turned. The second man followed, pausing only briefly at the doorway to look back at the table, at the women, at the scene that did not fit cleanly into any report he would write. Then he stepped outside. The sound of boots faded. The engine started again. Dust rose once more beyond the window. And then, just like that, the pressure lifted. Not gone. But shifted. The house remained. The table remained. And so did the choice that had been made. The sound of the Jeep faded into the distance, leaving behind a stillness that felt different from before, less fragile, more settled, like something had been decided without needing to be said out loud. No one moved immediately. The women remained seated, hands resting near their plates, eyes lowered but no longer fixed in fear. The room held its shape. Unbroken. Jack reached for the coffee pot again and poured another cup, the liquid steady as it filled the tin. He did not look toward the door. He did not watch the dust settle outside. Whatever had just passed did not change his pace. That was the first thing Anna noticed. Consistency. The same rhythm as before. The same quiet certainty. She picked up her bread again, this time without hesitation, and took another bite. Larger. More certain. The taste did not surprise her now. It stayed. Warm. Real. Something her body accepted without question. Across the table, Lise exhaled slowly, a breath she had been holding longer than she realized. Another woman leaned back slightly in her chair, not in defiance, but in release. Shoulders lowered. Hands relaxed. The tension that had filled the room minutes ago did not return. Not completely. It had changed shape. Jack set the pot down and finally looked at them, not as prisoners, not as a problem to solve, but as people sitting at his table. "You eat today," he said, his voice even, carrying no weight beyond the words themselves. "Tomorrow you work." Simple. Clear. No threat. No pressure. Just sequence. Anna nodded slightly before she realized she had done it. The instruction made sense. Not because it came from authority, but because it followed something real. You recover. Then you stand. Then you move. Outside, the heat had not changed. The sun still pressed down on the land with the same intensity, turning the air into something thick and unmoving. The fields waited. Rows stretching out in straight lines, demanding labor, demanding strength. But inside, there was time. Not much. 1 day. That was all the officer had given. One day to shift something that had taken months to break. Anna looked at her hands again. There was color returning, faint but visible. Not strength yet. Not enough. But something had started. She reached for the cup again and drank, this time without pausing, the bitterness settling into something steady inside her. Jack stood once more, moving to the window. He rested his hand against the frame, looking out across the yard, not searching, just observing. The land did not change for anyone. It demanded what it demanded. But how a man met that demand, that was different. That was choice. He turned back slightly, his eyes passing over the table one more time. You do not rush it, he said. You do it right. The words were not directed at anyone in particular, but they landed all the same. Anna understood them in a way that went beyond language. Not just the work. Everything. The way you stood. The way you waited. The way you chose. The women continued eating, not quickly, not slowly, just steadily, each movement reclaiming something that had been taken without noise. The house held that moment, quiet and intact, while outside the world remained unchanged. And for the first time since stepping off the truck, Anna did not feel like she was waiting for something to be taken away. She felt like she was being given time to become something again. Morning came slowly across the Texas plains, not with noise, but with light. Pale at first, stretching across the horizon, touching the edges of the fields before reaching the house. Anna was already awake. She sat on the edge of the narrow bed in the small room off the kitchen, her hands resting on her knees, listening to the quiet. No engines. No orders. Just the soft creak of wood as the house settled into the new day. For a moment, she did not move. She let the stillness exist without interruption, something she had learned to do only when it was safe enough to try. Then she stood. Her legs held. Not perfectly. Not without effort. But they held. That was new. She stepped toward the window. Outside, the land stretched wide and open, the same as yesterday, rows of crops lined with precision, the soil dry and waiting. The heat had not arrived yet, but it would. It always did. Behind her, a door opened quietly. Lee stepped into the room, her hair loosely tied back, her expression softer than it had been before. She nodded once, a small acknowledgement. Anna returned it. No words. They were not needed. In the kitchen, Jack was already moving. Coffee brewed on the stove, the scent filling the room with something steady and familiar. He did not look up when they entered. He poured 2 cups, set them on the table, then stepped back. An offering. Not an order. Anna sat. She wrapped her hands around the cup, feeling the warmth move into her fingers, grounding her in something simple and real. Lee sat across from her. The others followed, one by one, the same pattern as the day before, but different now. Less hesitation. Less distance between thought and action. Jack finally looked at them. You go out when you are ready, he said. No time given. No command attached. Just readiness. Anna nodded again, this time with intention. She took a sip, then set the cup down. The decision came quietly. She stood. The others watched, not waiting for permission, but for something else. A signal. Not from him. From her. She walked to the door and stepped outside. The air was cooler than it would be later, carrying the faint scent of earth, and something green just beginning to wake under the sun. She paused at the edge of the porch, looking out at the fields. Yesterday, they had felt distant. Demanding. Today, they felt closer. Not easier. Just clearer. Behind her. Footsteps followed. Lee's. Then another. And another. 8 in total, standing in the early light, not in formation, not in line, just present. Jack stepped out last. He did not stand in front of them. He stood beside them. Same direction. Same view. Rows run about 200 yards, he said, pointing toward the fields. You take it steady. No rushing. His voice carried the same tone as before. Even. Certain. He stepped down from the porch and walked ahead, not looking back to see if they followed. Anna did not hesitate this time. She stepped down and followed. The ground felt firm beneath her feet. Real. Each step carried weight, but also balance. The field came closer with every movement, the rows no longer abstract lines in the distance but defined paths, waiting. She reached the first row and stopped. Looked down. The work was simple. Repetitive. Demanding in its own way, but understandable. She bent slightly, her hands moving with care, slower than they might have before the war, but precise. Intentional. She worked for a minute. Then another. Her breath steady. Her body adjusting. Behind her, the others began as well, each finding their own pace, their own rhythm. No one spoke. The field filled with quiet movement, not forced, not driven, just steady. Jack moved along the rows, not correcting, not commanding, just present, watching without pressure. The sun rose higher, the light sharpening, the heat beginning its slow return. Anna straightened for a moment, placing her hand against her side, feeling her breath, feeling the effort. She looked down the row she had started. It was not much. Just a few yards. But it was hers. She had done it. Not because she was told. Because she could. And for the first time, that difference mattered. The sun climbed higher, turning the air thicker, heavier, pressing down across the rows until each movement carried more weight than the last. Sweat gathered slowly at first, then steadily, tracing lines down temples, along necks, soaking into fabric already worn thin. Anna kept her pace. Not fast. Never fast. Just steady. One motion. Then the next. Hands working close to the ground, careful, deliberate, as if each small action needed to be done correctly before moving forward. She did not look at the others often, but she could hear them. The soft shift of steps. The quiet rhythm of hands moving through plants. 8 separate movements, slowly becoming one shared pattern. No orders. No counting. Just repetition. Jack moved between rows, not stopping long in any one place. He did not correct them. He did not speed them up. He simply watched, his presence enough to hold the shape of the work without forcing it. When Anna straightened again, the sun was no longer low. It sat above them now, bright and direct, casting short shadows that clung close to their feet. She pressed her hand briefly against her side, feeling the rise and fall of her breath. It came faster now, but it held. That mattered. She looked down her row again. 10 yards this time. Maybe more. It was not perfect. The line wavered slightly. But it was done. Behind her, Lise paused, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. She let out a quiet breath, not of exhaustion, but of acknowledgement. They were still standing. That was the measure. Not speed. Not output. Standing. Working. Continuing. A truck passed in the distance, far beyond the edge of the fields, its sound faint but recognizable. Anna's head lifted for a second, her body reacting to the noise before settling again. No one came. No interruption. Just the road, somewhere beyond their work, carrying on without them. Jack stopped near the center of the field and checked his watch. A small motion. Practical. He looked up at the sun, then back across the rows. "That is enough," he said. His voice carried clearly but did not cut. It landed. The women did not stop instantly. Each finished the motion they were in, then straightened, one after another, like a line easing out of tension. Anna stood fully now, her back pulling slightly as she adjusted to the change. She turned and looked across the field. What had seemed wide and distant before now held marks. 8 lines, uneven but real, stretching back toward the porch. Evidence. Not of force. Of effort. Jack nodded once, almost to himself, then gestured toward the house. "Water first," he said. Simple. Immediate. The walk back felt different from the walk out. Slower, but not from weakness. From awareness. Each step placed with care, with the understanding of what had just been done. Anna felt the ground beneath her feet, solid, dependable, something she could trust without question. They reached the porch and stepped inside. The cool air met them again, softer now, familiar. On the table, pitchers of water waited, beads of condensation forming along the sides. Anna reached for one, poured into a cup, and drank deeply. The water was cold enough to shock, to cut through the heat and settle into her chest. She lowered the cup and breathed out slowly. Across the room, Jack leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely, watching them not with expectation, but with recognition. Not of what they had produced. Of what they had regained. Anna set her cup down and looked at her hands again. There was dirt under her nails. A thin layer of dust across her skin. Signs of work. Real work. Not assigned. Not forced. Done. She flexed her fingers once, then let them rest. Outside, the sun continued its climb, unchanged. The fields waited for more. They always would. But inside, something had already shifted. Not in the land. In them. The afternoon settled into a slower rhythm, the kind that came after effort had already been given and nothing more was demanded. The house held a quiet that was no longer fragile, no longer uncertain. It felt lived in, even if only for a day. Anna sat near the window, her back straight but relaxed, her hands resting lightly on her knees. Outside, the fields stretched under the full weight of the sun, unchanged in their expectation, unchanged in their purpose. But something inside her no longer matched that weight in the same way. She could feel it in her breathing. Even. Measured. Not forced. Across the room, Lise leaned against the wall, eyes half closed, not asleep, just still. The others moved quietly, small tasks filling the space without instruction. A cup rinsed. A chair adjusted. Movements that belonged to ordinary life, not confinement. Jack stood near the doorway, his hat back on, one hand resting against the frame as he looked out. Across the land. He did not speak for a long time. He did not need to. The day had already said enough. Anna followed his gaze, her eyes tracing the rows they had worked that morning. From this distance, the lines were faint, almost invisible against the vastness of the field. But she knew where they were. She could see them without seeing them. That was enough. The sound of another vehicle approached in the distance, slower this time, more deliberate. Anna did not tense. She noticed the difference before she understood it. Her body did not react the way it had before. It simply observed. The jeep came into view again, smaller against the wide horizon, then larger as it moved closer, stopping in the same place as before. Dust rose, then settled. The same two men stepped out. The same uniforms. The same measured steps. But something had shifted. Inside the house, no one froze. No one pulled back. They remained where they were. Present. The officers stepped inside once more, their eyes moving quickly, taking in the room, the table, the women. The same space. But not the same scene. There was no hesitation now. No untouched plates. No rigid stillness. Just people in a room, carrying the quiet weight of a completed day. The first officer looked at Jack. "Report," he said. Jack nodded slightly, then stepped forward just enough to meet the expectation without yielding anything more than necessary. "They worked the rows this morning," he said. "Took it steady. No issues." The officer's gaze shifted past him, toward the women. He paused, studying them, not their posture, not their uniforms, but something less defined. Anna met his eyes for a brief second. Not long. Just enough. She did not look away out of fear. She looked away because the moment had passed. The officer seemed to notice. Something small. Something quiet. He stepped toward the window, looking out across the field. His eyes followed the lines, faint but visible now that he knew where to look. 8 rows. Uneven. Real. He stood there for a moment, saying nothing. Then he turned back. "Continue," he said. One word. No correction. No adjustment. Just continuation. Jack inclined his head once. Yes, sir. The officers left as they had come, their presence measured, their departure leaving the same quiet behind. But the quiet was different now. It did not carry tension. It carried confirmation. Anna exhaled slowly, not because she had been holding her breath, but because there was no need to hold anything anymore. She looked down at her hands one last time, at the faint traces of work still there, at the steadiness that had returned without announcement. Outside, the sun began its slow descent, the light softening, the shadows stretching longer across the fields. The work would continue tomorrow. And the day after. The land would not change. The war would not pause. But something else had already taken root, something quieter than orders, stronger than expectation. She did not raise her voice. She did not resist. She did not demand. She stood. She worked. She remained. And in that stillness, something had been restored that no one in that room would ever be able to measure, but none of them would ever forget.